Believe me, the problems that they have are not the problems we think they have. They have problems, huge problems, but they're not the ones we're thinking about. And so I wouldn't take this. Do they need more compute? Yes, they absolutely need more compute. Are they compute constrained? Always. I mean, they're going to be compute constrained into the next decade, in my judgment. No matter what they say about it, just more is going to be needed, more and more and more.
It seems like over the last few months, we have hit a wall when it comes to wide release deployments of FSD. Really, I mean, 12.3.6 is the only version of FSD v12 that has gone out to every single vehicle in the fleet that I'm aware of, and that many of the other versions have been limited in scope. And so the question is, why are we not seeing larger rollouts of those software versions that have come since 12.3.6? And does that give us any information about what the pace of actual development is or not? So I'm going to first hand this over to Larry and let you give your thoughts.
I'm of the belief that that the rollouts have been very slow, significantly slower than would be indicated by the roadmap that we were given for this coming month, for this month that we're in, into the October event, um, and and it's definitely been slow since the move to version 12. Um, the early access program has been stutter started, but the wide access has been very, very slow. So I think that we're not at the point where we have the level of compute resources that open that bottleneck. I think we're probably going to have to await the cluster that's being assembled at Giga Texas. That's just the sense I get. I have no real knowledge at all. And so, I'm hoping that this kind of solves itself relatively soon. But for the moment, I see some risk in the October 10, in the 1010 project.
And what would you say that risk is, Larry?
The risk is that they're not able to release to them widely the versions that they have put into their the roadmap that they published. I get a sense that roadmap was not published without some pressure from Elon. Could be wrong, but that's kind of the way Elon works. He puts a stake in the ground, forces the team to work to that stake, and then if we don't make it, he understands, but he presses on to get the next target. So I think we have risk in the targets.
And so when it comes to the roadmap that the Tesla account shared for what they plan to release in September and October,
Mm.
do you think it's fair to say that needs to be released wide to the entire fleet in order for it to be considered accomplished? Or if they only release those features to the early access program, do you think that Elon and Ashok will say that's, accomplished the mission that we had for this timeline?
Well, it's that's a tough question because the answer is obvious. That 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 post indicates that this is wide release in the sense that if it doesn't turn up, did it ever get released? So I think that any timeline that publishes a date really is released to the general public. So I would say, yeah, that it would be a miss.
So, Nico, here's where I would ask you if you agree with that, or do you think that EAP only releases count?
I think it's irrelevant. I think we're missing the forest for the trees here. Um, I agree with pretty much everything Larry said, but I see it as optimistic. Is the thing. Um, the way I see it is, and I'm trying to think of a good analogy to for this to resonate with everybody. But the way I see it, it's like you're building a car, and everything's almost ready, but you want to wash it before you give it out. You're waiting for the new tires to arrive, and you got some floor mats that you want to put in that haven't arrived because it's still on their way. And that's where I think we're at right now. And what's happening is they are trying to next time they do a wide release, they want to be more feature complete. They want to be more robust. And so all they're doing at the moment, as far as what I my take on it, is that they're giving out releases to early release or early beta testers slash high beta users um, to get quick results and to answer questions that they're trying to validate for where they're trying to go for a bigger wide release. And I think we'll probably see that bigger wide release around Robotaxi Day. Is my impression. The reason they put out that roadmap, I think, is so that it can tie us over until we get to that to show us what's about to come. Because I'm of the opinion that the next wide release will be a really big one that will encompass you being able to, from your driveway, select where you want to go, and it goes. It parks when you get there. When you're ready to leave, you put where you want to go, you press it, it'll back out and it'll take you, right? It was in literally in the notes. So what they don't want to do, which if you're looking at it from a consumer perspective, from a user perspective, I get the frustration. But if you're looking at it from Tesla's perspective, the one who's actually building the product, you don't want to waste time rolling something out wide that maybe isn't complete. Or you roll it out enough, you get the data back you needed to iterate. Okay, I want to go and iterate and work on that. I don't want to waste time QAing trying to get it released to everybody else. We did a little bit of a release for hardware 3 because we needed to see what we need to do to emulate the data, the build, so that we can have it in parallel with hardware 4 or AI4. Sorry, I'm dead naming over here. But they're doing things so they can move at pace to iterate. And they have this 10/10 deadline that is nipping at their heels. They're not going to sit there and appease the masses by putting out updates just because everybody wants it. That's not the Tesla way. That's not an efficient way to move for towards progress or to get to deadlines. So that's what I think is happening. I think they're putting out just enough to validate what they're doing so then they can go back, and continue to churn out and churn out. And they're working on so many things. They're working on Summit. They're working on being able to allow it to pull in and back out. They're working on, the general stack itself. They're working on Highway. They're not going to sit here and waste time trying to appease everybody so that they can have 12.5, so they can have the next update. I'd rather annoy people and deliver something in October or December and get to feature complete. That's what matters.
Yeah, I'm aligned with that. I mean, the only issue is the announcement and the timeline published. So I don't, I was amazed by that timeline, to be honest. I thought it was incredibly ambitious, but I think it's an incredibly important document, probably the most important document, as I said at the time, that they've post that they've made this year or that has been made this year, because it it looks, if they achieve these goals by the end of October, we will be in an extremely good position going into the new year with, real robotaxis, likely, highly likely, I would say, in the new year. On the other hand, I'm a software developer, have been for 60 years. And I do know that, you know, I- when you publish a release date, that generally means release to your customers, not release to a select group of testers. So it's the interpretation of release roadmap, of the words release roadmap, that, I think is possibly not as clear as it should have been. So if these are early release deadlines, I think we should have called them early release deadlines or early release roadmap. But, they could still hit these dates. Who knows? They could hit these dates and issue them in for wide release. But look, we're in the middle of September now. The chances of these 7 bullet points in September are coming in September are really, really, really slim to none, because we don't have wide release of two earlier versions, across 2 different hardware platforms. So I think we're probably this roadmap seems to me an early release roadmap with a very high level of risk, and that's how I would position it. The question is not whether we're doing a great job. The question is, are we working to this as an early release roadmap, or is this a wide release? Is this truly a roadmap?
The only thing I would push back on that in is just my experience. I have worked for some of the biggest software companies in the world, currently do as well. And I will say, when we announce a product or a release, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's and maybe you're saying the same thing and I'm misinterpreting you, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually going to be the product full-fledged the way we intend it to be. Normally we announce what the release will be, and that will really be the beginning of kind of a soft launch beta to get early adopters in so we can use them. And then there's an actual GA date that comes. Now I know it's a little different here with FSD. There's not like a GA, we have beta test. So it's a little different. It's not exactly a one-to-one parallel, but I do think that I don't know. There's some similarities, but there's also some differences. I'm not sure if it's an apples to apples with traditional software world. Would you think that's somewhat cogent?
Well, I mean, certainly Tesla's trained us to think that way, and I think we have to think that way. So, we're probably talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, Look, all of these features, if they're available on early release, it would be, I think, an incredible, effort. So I think that it would have been perhaps better to have recouched this post perhaps a little differently. But we are seeing actual smart summon
And
in
Cybertruck Auto Park.
yeah, and we're seeing Cybertruck Autopart, absolutely. Um, the end-to-end network on highway. This is a big release. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
huge release. I think that's going to be, that's going to be a full-time job for somebody.
Yes.
And then Cybertruck FSD is a gigantic release. I mean, you're releasing FSD to your absolute gold star customers. So that's very important. So it's an incredible roadmap. It points to the probability of robotaxi in the 25 timeframe, and if that is achieved even on a relatively small scale, that would be a massive achievement. So you know, it would be nicer if we had seen, instead of this dribble of features, we'd seen a wider release of what we already have, and we're just not seeing it yet.
The way that I read this roadmap is kind of in the vein of the way that Elon puts out public facing timelines, that, usually the way that they work is that they are supposed to put a lot of pressure on the internal team to deliver on a set of functionality, and that it's more of a motivation tool than it is a hard and fast promise that
Mm.
we will actually be able to deliver. And so when I first read this timeline, I immediately realized that, we have a bunch of clear things that are supposed to come in September, a couple of clear things that are supposed to come in October, most of them very significant. And then we skip straight to Q1 of 2025. And what I'm reading into that is that all of the things here in September and October are pieces of functionality that are supposed to be demoed on 1010, and that they have, as such, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, then I think that they would consider anything that releases to the early access program as success, because it will allow them to then run a demo with Tesla owned vehicles that actually show all of these pieces of functionality on 1010. And then general customers will probably receive those things eventually, as long as we don't end up in a situation where we have the 2024 version of releasing Smart Summon. Some customers get it, it doesn't really scale well, and then we end up having several years worth of delay to deliver a functional version of that.
Jeez, that's so negative. Come on, man. Where's the hopium? Where's the optimism? I would bet you that all these get accomplished before 1010, and that during the event they're saying we just pushed out a free trial for everybody on this new version. Like I bet you there's something going on with that, because everyone always wants marketing advertisement. This is the day to do it. Give everyone a free 1 month trial with all these new features. That would be, I think, a great campaign.
What day do you think that free trial will become available?
I think 1010 would be the time to do it, right? Especially if you invite press and everything to the event.
Yeah, I think that the chances are close to zero that there will be all of these features actually demonstrated on 1010. That's the sense I get. I mean, it it's possible, but I
Can,
I'm
can,
not.
can can I ask a
Yeah,
question on that?
yeah.
What feature there do you think can't be done today that like Omar's car can't do today?
Well, the full stack on the on the
Okay,
freeway.
highway.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's a big one, and that's one I think that is going to take a lot of work. I think there'd be, it probably won't be a very smooth release, but I think that's the biggest issue. Um,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
mm,
but again, that's a highway, so we know that it's not gonna be demoed. We're not gonna go out to a highway with a big audience, right? So that one, you can take that one out of it. So, but even then, you could still demo FSD work on the highway. Most people aren't going to know, oh, this is version 12, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, fake it until you make it. So I think they definitely could fake it. Um, I I would be a lot more comfortable if a team release schedule was real. And this, I don't believe, is real. That's my honest opinion. I was extremely excited to see it. But as reality sets in, I'm a little bit less excited. And I think, this is I mean, I love Elon's optimism. I love him setting these goals. I love him pushing the team. But I think if we have a team release schedule published, I think we should be a lot more cautious about it. That's my that's my belief.
So, one of the other questions that I wanted to dive into is the actual QA process that, Nick, it seems like for whatever reason, you know, they're not rolling things out wide. And there's two potential explanations for that. One of them is the very optimistic read of the situation, and one of them is the more pessimistic one. One of them is that, perhaps they actually have enough infrastructure in place with a hardware 3 data center, just racks and racks of hardware 3, that they think they can do all of the QA necessary to make a release fully capable of going wide to the whole fleet. and that right now they're just churning through. We've solved our compute bottleneck, so we can do all the training that we need, and we pretty much have a robust pipeline for QA after the fact, and that maybe we're churning through multiple releases, and we're only shipping out enough cars to the customer, or enough software updates to as few cars as possible, to then make sure that we're validating, yes, real world results are matching simulation, and then move on to the next thing. The other more pessimistic view is that we actually don't have a QA pipeline that is automatable, and that every time we go to push these releases to the fleet, that we run into discovering that our simulation is not generalizing, and that we're not actually getting the results in the real world that say, yes, our simulated environment matched up, and we're running into surprises when we push out to the EAP, and that's causing us to go back to the drawing board. So I'm curious, from your perspective, why do you think it would be one versus the other, and what arguments would you make?
Yeah. Um, yeah. So we were talking about this before we went live here. And I told you I was trying to think of an analogy, and this isn't a good one, but if you if you're familiar, I got two. So one's a pizza pie, and one is traditional rag model. Uh, so you can do a lot with an LLM using a RAG model without actually having to fine tune an LLM, right? All we're doing is we're influencing the model based on predefined documents, or whatever sources we have, and we don't have to train a whole new model. It's amazing. I could see a world, I don't know, but I could see where Tesla's doing something very similar. They have their simulator, and they're getting results there, but then they're actually putting out into the real world with early beta testers plus high FSD users, who are probably people who aren't going to fool around. They get enough feedback from that to into their loop, so that then they can go and iterate. My pizza analogy was, imagine you're trying to come up with your own pizza pie, and you're trying to make something new, native, or you're trying to get the marinara sauce just right and all that. Well, you're going to make one, taste it, maybe have a couple buddies taste it, see what they think, and you're gonna make another one, and you're gonna keep turning out. You're not gonna go and sell it to everybody until you think it's ready, right? You're gonna get some quick feedback from them, and then you're gonna iterate on it. Oh, it's too sour. Oh, it's not sweet enough. Oh, you're missing this, that. And I think that's kind of what's happening here. They're doing just enough to get the results they need. And the reason I think that they're probably using a cluster of AI3 or AI4, I don't know. Again, I can't stress that enough. I don't know. I'm speculating here. But I imagine that it doesn't really scale with these edge cases. It doesn't scale to go out wide, because then I'm waiting for certain situations that I'm trying to see, did it fix this or not? Right? With the simulator, especially if it's a good simulator, which they're using real world data to simulate, right? They can go and query all the data they have, and they can find certain scenarios, and that can influence the simulator they have. You can then go and look for very specific things. Oh, we keep getting too close to edge and creating rim rash. All right, we want to see how this version of the build affects that. All right, well, I don't want to wait for 50 million people to go and try to do this, or go into that certain situation. Let's go ahead and create that right now in the simulator. Let's throw out to some people, see if it's, jiving with what they have. I just said jiving. Haven't said that word in a while. But that, again, I'm speculating, but I think that's what's happening. They're trying to iterate as fast as possible. I hope. I could be wrong. Maybe they are hitting the wall, but I every time I've heard anybody say that they're hitting a wall or they're stuck, all of a sudden they drop a new version. It's like, oh my goodness, look at what they just did. And everybody gets excited again until, oh, here's another lull period, right? We didn't see any update with 11 for a long time until 12 came out. And all of a sudden 12 came out, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, what just happened?
Well, 12 was a massive change in approach, right? It was the algorithm changed, I mean, dramatically. The whole method of, of,
Yeah.
of training changed. And sorry, the architecture of the product changed. And it's amazing how quickly they were able to make that change. I was stunned, actually. And I think you may be right, Nick, but we may also be in a situation where they are having to adjust the architecture itself. And we may be, having longer delays than they had anticipated. Um, it, it's, I mean, it's not a great situation when we're in such. When you publish a timeline with that short a with that short a timeline on it, you would think that you were really close to actually executing on it. But maybe they intend to execute it all on the one day, on 10/10, and
But what
maybe
makes you
that's
think they're not?
because the risk of rolling all of that out on one day is pretty high. I would have thought that they had a lot of that already done, and they were going to, release maybe at least one release before 10/10.
But they probably will, and that's why they have the September timeline. No, today's only September 13th, right? We still have 2 weeks to go in September. So that's still a long time.
Yeah, 2 real
Yeah,
weeks, not 2 Elon weeks.
Yeah,
yeah. Well,
yeah,
again, I kind of think I don't know. Maybe I'm the last Uber bull around, but I believe in what they're doing. I use FSD every. I know you do too, Larry. I use FSD every. I tell people who have Teslas that haven't subscribed to FSD. I tell them you use it for 1 month, you'll never go back
that's
because
right.
the day you stop using it, you're gonna realize how bad of a driver you really are. You it's until you've used it for a whole month, you don't see the delta between your driving and FSD. And that delta is so stark. It's insane.
That's why I won't sell my X.
Yeah.
I bought the Cybertruck intending to change the X for the Cybertruck. But I'm not going to selling my Cybertruck until I have, selling my X until I have
Yeah.
FSD on my Cybertruck. And then I may not sell my X anymore. I love that car. But, it, it, it would be it would be advantageous to be a lot clearer about these roadmaps. It really would be. And you can't be clear about a roadmap. It's very, very, very risky. I I know that. I don't think I've ever hit a roadmap on the nail ever. But 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 when you publish a roadmap like that, you really are raising the risks very high. And I think that's where we are. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, one of the things that you try and not do in a roadmap is give very specific feature sets. You talk about the objectives,
Hmm.
but you don't talk about the feature sets. And they actually published a set of feature sets.
Yeah,
So,
I'm so happy you just said that because that was a thing that really stood out to me as well. Normally, you would say, "Hey, we're going to release, in any software, we're going to release, Windows 10, Windows 12, Windows 2019." You're not exactly saying what's all in it. Even Tesla, yeah, 12.3 should go wide tomorrow, right? But you're not going to say what's in it. They even stopped doing that in the release notes. The
right.
fact that they did that was, to me, I'm hoping, was signal that no, we're confident.
Yeah, and I think if they had said in release, and the objective in this release is to improve, the driving around the endpoints. It's to improve that kind of stuff would have been, great. But to actually put in feature by feature, it's when they say that to me, it means they're testing those features. They're finding those tests to be running very well. They've got 2 weeks to go to the release. They're making sure they're going to do the next 100 hours per driver to make sure. Blah blah blah. So that's where I differ. That's where I'm at odds
Yeah.
with you.
I I just feel like if you look at that list, those releases through October, as far as the functionality of a vehicle to be robotaxi, it's complete. I'm not saying it works perfect, but
Yeah,
it's got all the tools in its
yeah,
toolbox to do
I
everything
agree.
you need.
I
So
agree.
I think a big, uh, I think they want to be able to say every vehicle now has the ability to, do everything. like we've released this, we've pushed out, go test it, supervise, whatever you want to label it. But I think that's the main thing that they're really trying to get to, because you can't have a robo taxi event and then say, well, it can't do this, it can't do that. It just seems, or you're right. Maybe they say, by the end of the year, we'll be able to everything. That's possible too. And again, I'll be just as happy with that. But I see this and I get excited.
Yeah, I also got excited.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it would have been great if this roadmap had said, um, the next release will be by 1010 and it will cover all the remaining items to be feature complete.
Yeah.
That would have been huge. But, what they're doing, they're actually listing feature sets, and it seems very, I mean, you say we've got 2 weeks, maybe we've got 2 weeks, and maybe they'll release it to one or two cars. They'll release it to Omar, maybe, and then I'll be very happy. But I'll be much happier if they release me my FSD and my Cybertruck. So,
Yeah. And the
Doc,
highway.
if you're listening to this, there you go.
The highway is a big deal because
Yeah,
now, I imagine you're also on 12.5, Larry.
yeah,
When you drive 12.5, it used to be where the different, like even the lower versions of 12, where you're like, yeah, they're pretty good, but highway works. Highway hasn't really changed. 12's gotten so much better that now on the highway, sometimes I'm like, oh, it's a little sketchy, because now I'm comparing it to 12.5, and
exactly. The
it's hilarious.
smoothness, the confidence with which with which it engages every maneuver is so much better, with the 12 than it was with 11. And that lack of confidence on the highway, you really feel that now.
Yeah, the one thing that I would say makes me more excited and optimistic, and to side probably more with Nick on this, is that this post was from Ashok, and that's why I pulled up here who it is that is posting this, and this is not just he has posted it, but this is his pinned post. And Ashok has much 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 better track record when it comes to promising FSD features and timelines than
Yeah.
Elon does.
Look, Elon's got a fantastic track record. He's just late, but apart from being late, his track record is pretty darn good. I mean, you could point to one or two failures in in his product prognostications across a career of 32 years. That's
Yeah.
an amazing track record. And dates, if you're in the software world, that dates are just, you can't hit dates. I mean, I don't think I've ever hit a date in my entire life. Have
Yeah.
you, Nick?
No, we used to joke like, if something gets announced in December and it's going to be March when you can get it. It's like, well, when can we really get it? March, August, yeah. There's always like a 6 month window there. Yeah,
Most famously, we wanted to do a resurfacing of an app of our major product. Actually, we were going to change the UI, and we said, probably about 8 months, maybe 12 at the most. I said, well, if it's going to be that, let's go to 18 months with our client base, and that's what we'll do in the big annual event. And that 18 months turned to 4.5 years.
wow.
So it happens, I mean,
I was going to guess 36 months. So,
yeah, 4.5 years is kind of extreme, but there we are. That's what happened. And it wasn't entirely due to the software. I mean, there were political events, there were changes of teams in country, and, there are so many things that happen that, any slight perturbation in the solar system can cause terrible damage in a software business. Ask Volkswagen. So it's a very difficult business. So I don't hold a grudge against Elon for any late delivery at all. And when he's dealing with molecules and we're only dealing with software, it's even more difficult. So I don't hold a grudge against him. I think the only thing that I would say is that when you publish a list of actual features, you want to be a little bit more cautious.
Yeah, the other thing too is, we talk about these software updates, and I think we forget. It's not like we are. I'll go back to my Windows example. It's not like I'm going from Windows 10 to Windows 2019. I just want the 2019 software updates. Like, okay, this has been done. Like, we're talking about novel software
Yeah.
challenges, new problems that we have never been. We're not just talking about an iteration on something. Like, every release has to be a breakthrough, right? Like, it's very different. It's like Starship. Every single time Starship goes up and down, it's like, okay, we can have timelines on when we think we'll catch it, but like we don't. We're guessing, and we're going to keep putting it out there. And ideally, they do simulated tests before you actually do a launch, right?
Yeah.
And you try to iterate until the simulations are looking the way you want it, and then you slowly actually do it, and you apply for the FAA. You wait 6 months, and then you get your license finally to go.
Yeah, I mean, FAA just represents one of those, all of those. It's a representative of all of those variables that are unaccountable for because there are just so many of them. So anyway, if they deliver on 1010 on a demo that people can actually drive or that can be driven in that car around the lot, so be it. I mean, I'd be very happy, very, very happy because my, I'd spoken about a 1.5 to 3 year timeline about a year ago, and we're still on that. We're still on that track. I think we can be, selling rides by mid of next year, even at on a beta basis, beta, whatever that means. So if we're selling rides at the mid of next year, I think it would be a huge win for the company. Huge win.
Absolutely. And yeah, I guess that gets to the major question that this whole conversation is driving towards is, are we really adjusting our timelines based on what we're seeing right now? And it sounds like, Larry, your position is no, you're still basically holding the same timeline that you had several months ago, roughly.
Not really, Hans, because my timeline was 1.5 to 3 years. I'm now adjusting that down to that one and a. I think that the probability of that 1.5 years is really
So
closer
you're
to the.
bringing it in.
Yeah. I think it's close to. It's just the likelihood of that early stage happening has risen quite significantly, very significantly. It was like a 30% chance of an early. It's now. It wasn't even a 30%, I don't think, but now it's over the 50% point at this point. That's a lot.
Well, so here's one of the question marks that I have in my mind, that this is one of the things that makes me a little bit more nervous, and that is, if we, and I guess not necessarily nervous that the timeline is going to go out, but it's just I think an unsolved challenge. I'd be curious to get y'all's feedback on this. And that is, if we're moving to AI4 being the cutting edge, the bleeding edge of development for the full self-driving and the robotaxi software package, then I think we need to get that new AI4 cluster, which I believe was supposed to go online in Texas. And since so far all we've seen there is the NVIDIA cluster, I don't think that it's up. But do you think that, like, we basically cannot fully move forward with robotaxi development until we have moved the entire stack over to larger neural nets that are only, or that are primarily run on AI4, and that they're built on a software stack that is AI4 native, that then has to be ported back to hardware 3 instead of what we have right now, which is it's still kind of built on a hardware 3 stack, but they're only using a little bit of the feature set that has a little bit more capability in AI4. And so it's a little, kind of like this weird in between place where it's a little bit too big to run on hardware 3 without some extra legwork, but it's not really taking advantage of AI4, and it's certainly not AI4 native. Like, how are you thinking about that, and how does that impact the timeline?
I prefer Nick to answer that question.
Oh, I, I don't think it's relevant at all. I think I don't think they're compute constrained in the sense of right now making progress. I do think they're going to have Cortex set up over between today and 2025, and even then in 2025 they're going to have to add even more servers to it, and they're going to have to continue to build it out. But I don't think compute is their constraint at the moment. I think they're coming on, just as fast as they need them. I think they have a good pace right now with all of that.
I think I disagree, and I can give you specific reasons why, but uh,
Go for it.
well, okay. So I think that if we're trying to experiment with larger and larger neural nets in the inference side of the equation, and if you want to do super reliable real time inference on this huge amount of incoming streaming data that they're dealing with the video feeds, and we're obviously, like, you guys are driving 12.5, and so you can feel the difference that larger inference net is giving you. And if you want to drive better performance on that, then you have to increase in a basically linear scale the amount of compute you have in order to train these bigger models. And these bigger models, like I said, we haven't fully solved how do we get those bigger models to run seamlessly and smoothly on hardware 3.
Yeah. Hans, I think you're making assumptions that
Yeah.
are based upon rumor and, based upon small talk between relatively small people. I don't think we have a clue. I don't think we have line of sight. I mean, I know that we've been told that 12.5 is native to hardware 4, and that hardware and will run hardware 3. I don't take and I've heard this theory that hardware 3 will never be FSD.
Well, I'm definitely not in that camp. I believe that hardware 3 will definitely get it.
I'm not saying you are. I just say
Yeah.
that we're working in absolute vacuum and we're making these stories up. And honestly, I don't think any of it is true. I think if we knew the truth, it would be completely different to all these imaginings of ours. And I think Nick is right. I mean, I think it's kind of, this is the technical stuff that these guys are dealing with on a daily basis. And believe me, the problems that they have are not the problems we think they have. They have problems, huge problems, but they're not the ones we're thinking about. And so I wouldn't take this. Do they need more compute? Yes, they absolutely need more compute. Are they compute constrained? Always. I mean, they're going to be compute constrained into the next decade, in my judgment. No matter what they say about it, just more is going to be needed, more and more and more. Inference, inference has just exploded. The latest GPT, the latest release from OpenAI, has just exploded the need for even more inference. Now, this is a completely different stack. I mean, the stack that Tesla have, FSD stack, is very different to large language models. So it's not directly relevant, but nonetheless, I don't think they're going to get enough compute ever, not ever, but in the next couple of years, as they deal with more and more variants, more and more different vehicles, more and more geographies. It's just going to be need more and more and more. So I really think that a breakthrough moment will come when the big stack gets up and running in Texas, and then another breakthrough will come when the Dojo gets live in Buffalo, and then the next breakthrough will come when the next stack gets implemented, and so on. And I wouldn't worry about these technical, what is the word that I want to use, this technobabble that we engage in, because we just don't know. And even the most brilliant amongst us with the most experience in software development are also shadow boxing.
Yeah, I I agree so much with what you just said, Larry. Hans, yeah, this whole parameter count talk, and look, if there's one thing that has become really clear, I would say over the last, call it 4 to 6 months, is that we have a lot of inefficiencies in our models, that we can actually make really small models that we're not even scratching the surface.
Exactly.
And so I would just, put a pin in that, because that's really become very clear in the last 6 to 4 months.
Yeah.
And look, I think one of the most consequential interviews I've seen in quite some time was the one that Andre Karpathy was just on, where
Yeah, it
he
was really
talked
good.
about he just the way I mean, man, I wish you saw Tesla. The way he explains things is
Mm.
so, there's not, every word's intentional. It's just so clear and concise. And he still believes that Tesla's in the lead. He still thinks Tesla's got the right approach. And he's, I call him the godfather of these spaces. And I believe what he says. I think he has the right sense of what problems they're experiencing and what
Yeah.
challenges they have, and he sees line of sight. And to me, that's what I need to hear.
I would add one other thing, Nick. I mean, yes, Andre is an outstanding scientist and pioneer. I would also point to Wolfram. He wrote a blog post recently, quite a long one, about size and whether size matters. And it was a fantastic blog post. And you don't have to be a great mathematician to understand it, although it does get a little deep. But one of the things that becomes crystal clear is that size is misleading. It's not that size doesn't matter, it's that size is misleading, because it's so much easier to go for size than it is to perfect the code, or to perfect the training, or perfect the model or the design. And he proves that, and he shows it extremely well. So all I'm trying to say is that Nico's right. I mean, 100% right. But we just don't know the problems that they've got. That's honestly my opinion. And whatever the problems are, they're not the ones we're thinking of. They're big problems, but they're not the ones we're thinking of. So I would just dismiss most of that out of hand.
I actually do agree with pretty much everything that you said, but I'll caveat it by saying I think that the challenges that we are talking about are ones that definitely open up the error bars quite a bit on the timeline, in my
Yeah.
understanding. That the challenges that we're talking about needing to be solved are open questions, and we don't necessarily know, when are we going to get the attention is all you need paper that unlocks, how do we make these much more condensed models. And so I would say that's one piece of the puzzle. And then the other thing is just when I step back and I look at things from, 1,000-foot view, Elon just built the largest training cluster on earth for xai, not for Tesla. And that cluster is going to produce incredible models, but those models are still not going to have the 100% reliability, and they're operating in the space of LLMs. And to really, I think it was the Andre Karpathy interview where he was talking about the differences in challenge that an LLM faces versus what Tesla's doing with full self-driving. That the amount of data that you're having to compress down into meaningful tokens when you're ingesting video instead of ingesting text. That's a big challenge. And then to have to figure out all of not only that compression of the real world into whatever the semantic space is that you're using to make decisions, but you have that clock that is ticking and you've got to make those decisions every couple milliseconds.
Well, you're just pointing, yeah, you're really just pointing to the complexity of it. Hans, unfortunately, I do have to drop at the hour,
Okay.
so I hope you'll forgive me if I drop at this point. But your point is well made. It's tough. It's a very, very tough problem they're trying to solve.
Yes. Well, I really appreciate you being here today, Larry, and for
Sure.
batting these ideas around with us. Nico, can you hang around for just a second? And then I think we can probably wrap
Sure.
up here in just a minute.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Nick.
Cheers.
Really enjoyed
Cheers.
it. Bye.
Have a
Awesome.
good weekend.
See you, Larry. Um, but yeah, to continue my point there, that I think it does that challenge to me, based on my understanding of the trade-offs between test time compute and training time compute, pushes the need for a larger ratio of training time compute to be even larger on an FSD type challenge than on an LLM type challenge. And that's where I think that there is, I would say, a small chance based on, like, I think we're really close. So this is not something that I would place high in the probability of, downside scenarios, but I think there is a small chance that it might take us until Dojo V2 or V3 installed at scale in order to have the full scale training capacity needed to solve basically robotaxi everywhere all the time at 100%. But that doesn't mean that we can't have, a model that we can begin generating revenue far before then.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really agree with the premise of that. I think we're talking apples and donkeys, like not even, and we're missing and especially with the XAI, we're missing the real beauty of XAI and Tesla. The way I would think about it is XAI and Tesla AI are as similar in what they're trying to do as SpaceX and Tesla are and what they're trying to do. Yet, SpaceX has been extremely valuable for Tesla, and Tesla's been extremely valuable for SpaceX, right? We know that. We've seen it. Proof's in the pudding. Same thing is happening right now with XAI and Tesla AI, is that while they have two completely different problems that they're tackling, while they're approaching them in two different ways, the training sets look different, everything's really different. They're both learning techniques. They're both learning how to do different novel solutions. You talked about attention is all you need. Even the people who wrote that paper didn't know what they wrote. They didn't understand the impact of what they did. It took a few other people that ended up going off and doing OpenAI to understand what actually was so profound about that. So writing a paper is really negligible. That's irrelevant. I truly believe that Tesla and XAI are solving problems even bigger than that every single day, and they're having breakthroughs every few months. They're just not out there writing about it because, well, why would you, to be honest? Especially if you think AI is a existential risk, why would you just put it out there for the other people to be able to, imitate or learn from what you're doing? If you really think this is an arms race for good versus evil or nefarious actors versus not, right? You have the Chinese out there using bots and putting guns on them. Like you have all kinds of things happening. You wouldn't do that. But I think XAI and Tesla AI, although they have complete different problem statements, they're trying to do completely different things. They will benefit each other through their learnings and solving problems. And I think that's going to be invaluable in the long run. As far as size and training runtime and all that, I really don't think it matters. Honestly, I think Cortex is more important for Optimus than it is for Tesla FSD. I think FSD is more so about getting enough of those edge cases and being able to run those, and aiming for smoothness. I mean, I think FSD is at a polishing stage more than anything else. I don't think there are any like real big things they have to solve for. They're polishing, they're refining. There's a couple interesting, weird, quirky edge cases. Like they're tweaking that at this point. There's still some things that obviously I don't see, as in, you know, a school bus stop sign doesn't stop for it yet. It doesn't pull over for an ambulance yet. You know, it'll recognize ambulance, it'll recognize police cars. I'll see on my thing, it'll say slowing down for emergency vehicle, right? Uh, I'll see things like that, but you know, that's really all I can think of. I mean, a school zone comes up, it slows down, speeds back up afterwards. No problems there.
Does yours actually obey the speed limit of the school zone on 12.5?
Yep.
Because I've noticed that in 12.3.6, mine will slow down, but it won't slow down all the way to the speed limit. And
Mine,
and
mine
maybe it's
does.
because
But
mine are too like I'm driving through 25s, and like it'll come down to about 35 is about as slow as it'll go.
your school zones are 25?
I have one in my
Oh,
town that is
wow.
25. A lot of them around here are higher, but there's a specific one that I drive
Higher?
through a lot that's
Oh, ours are 15.
oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, so
yeah.
you're definitely slowing down a
We
lot
care
more
about our
than
kids.
mine. Yeah. Hey, we want ours to be in shape so they can kick butt at football, so they have
Run.
to run.
Well, you definitely got that at Texas, although I think some of the best football players have come out of Florida, just saying.
Yeah.
Uh, no, but, yeah, I don't see I think right now it's just a matter of when, not if, or I don't think there's a big challenge that they need to solve for FSD. I really don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I always say everybody has their own geographical bias, let alone their own bias and how they think things should be done. But I truly believe that if you were sitting in the back of the car, you would not be as critical as you are about certain things. You would not be like, go faster, go slower.
Oh,
Why did you take
100%.
this left instead of that one? It's like
I'm
you
convinced
get
that
an
my
Uber, you're
terrible
just doing
driving
this.
is the right way to drive. I constantly am like, "Oh my gosh, car, go faster." Like we're never going to get there. So I use the pedal a lot even while it's on
Really.
FSD on 12.3.6.
Man, you gotta chill out, man. You gotta come to Florida, live a little tropical life, take things easy.
Yeah,
No, but
I really do.
I, I think we're good. I really do. I think they're at this point they're just trying. I think all their attention right now is on 1010 and making sure that everything's solid for that. I really do think that they're trying to put like again. I think even if they're not ready with all that by 1010, which I don't see why they wouldn't be, like they've already started, right? They've already started some of that. Eye tracking sunglasses, that's probably low on the priority to be frank. Highway, okay, that's a big deal. Summon, they've already soft released that. Um, Cybertruck gain FSD, okay, maybe that slips a little. Um, FSD parking lots pull in, pull out, like that's it already does that for me sometimes, minus the back out. It'll pull in sometimes. Sometimes it's like, oh, we're in this parking lot. Yeah, let's just pull in the parking spot. I'm like, all right, why don't you always do that for me? Instead, I always have to back in. Right. So like it's kind of already
Yep.
there. And I don't think anybody, at least 12.5, maybe with 12.3, I don't remember 12.3 that well. I don't think anybody's been in a situation where you've gotten to a place where it's like, ah, damn, they close this road and you're there and you can tell FSD wants to back up. It wants to. It knows the right answer, but it just can't. And you sit I feel bad for it. I literally feel like, oh my God, like this is like abuse. Like this car wants to do something that just can't do. Like it's funny, but I think I don't know. I'm more bullish about where we're at right now than I've been in a while. And I have like a 1% chance that we do not have some version of, whether it's human supervised or not, I don't know, but somehow Tesla will be generating revenue via some type of Uber-like robo-taxi before 2026.
Yeah, I concur with that timeline. I think there's a chance that they, do some token project inside of 2024.
Oh, elaborate what you mean by that? Like a medallion when you say token, or I don't want to mix taxonomy with parameters.
Token as in, they'll make some geofenced, like they'll do something, whether,
Like a
and
token
maybe it's
city.
just like employee, yeah, like an employee only, we can pick you up and take you to your jobs from your house, or something like a pilot, like a very, very constrained pilot program of some
See,
sort.
I think that's already happening. I'm convinced that's already happening
It wouldn't surprise
in
me.
Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I really do think that's happening already. We just don't know it because if there's a supervised, if it's like supervised, and they're just testing it out, and it's in Austin, well then to everybody else, it just looks like it's another Tesla Uber. You would have no idea. So,
Yeah.
cool. Anything
All
else you
right.
got?
No, I think that's a good place to wrap.